Hey guys, Happy New Year and welcome back to the Replay Media. Hope y'all had an excellent 2023 as it was for cinema, with great sequels, new proposals, and blockbusters that moved masses in theater. Undoubtedly, 2023 was an example of how conventional cinema can compete with streaming services. Beyond the big event of the year, the Barbenheimer, there were other big hits such as Across the Spider-Verse, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Five Nights at Freddy's, and other gems. But of course, that doesn't mean that every movie has done well. Without further ado, let's take a look at the 10 worst movies of 2023. Number 10, Pet Sematary Bloodlines, directed by Lindsay Anderson Beer. We start with a sequel that no one asked for, from a remake that no one asked for. Pet Sematary is one of Stephen King's most acclaimed novels and has terrified millions of readers since 1983. While the 1989 film adaptation is not perfect, it earned a place among horror classics and is fondly remembered. As such, a remake was not as necessary, but still, Paramount Pictures bet on this project in 2019, resulting in a flop among critics and audiences. Surprisingly, it didn't do too badly at the box office, so they made the sequel, Pet Sematary Bloodlines, a prequel that introduces us to Judd Crandall's past when he confronted the seekers of his town's sinister pet cemetery. It sounds good, but the result is dull, with a flat story, a rather simple character development, and a very regular horror. You can tell that Paramount wants to squeeze the Pet Sematary name, especially to attract customers to their streaming platform, although they ended up burying the saga. And I don't think there will be any more resurrection. Number 9, Napoleon, directed by Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott never fails, or almost never. It cannot be said that Napoleon starring Joaquin Phoenix is a bad film, but too many moviegoers have found flaws, historical inconsistencies, or annoying licenses. The film was supposed to present an original and personal look at the origins of Napoleon Bonaparte and his ruthless rise to power, exploring along the way his volatile relationship with his wife and true love, Josephine, played by Vanessa Kirby. The problem is that Ridley Scott took the personal vision too literally, as the film has many historical inconsistencies that take you out of the experience. On top of that, there's a war choreography that even the most inexperienced in the subject found odd. Beyond that, Napoleon can be an enjoyable experience, though it feels like a disappointment coming from Ridley Scott. Number 8, Expendables 4, directed by Scott Waugh. The Expendables saga has never been known for innovating in the film industry. In fact, no film is obligated to do so. Many people are satisfied with just enjoying a spectacle of shooting, explosions, and blood. That is the essence of Expendables, and its cast full of action stars attest to that. However, the fourth installment of the franchise couldn't even achieve that. In Expendables 4, the team led by Barney Ross is back in action to take on the biggest threat they've ever known, one that could trigger World War III. While some stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terry Crews, and Jet Li did not return for this installment, the mercenaries added new stars like Megan Fox, 50 Cent, Andy Garcia, and Tony Jaa. But not even the new faces were able to save a saga that had been falling apart since the third part. The action formula worked for them at the beginning, although now it feels out of place, turning it into a B-movie. And the worst part is that Sylvester Stallone barely had any screen time. In short, a recipe for failure. Number 7, Paint, directed by Britt McAdams. As soon as we saw the first image of Owen Wilson in Paint, we immediately compared him to Bob Ross, to the point that many thought it was a biopic of the famous painter. In this fictionalized story, we meet Carl Nargle, a charming man who has been hosting his own painting show on the Vermont Public Television for decades. His art captivates and has attracted the attention of many women over the years, especially those who work at the television station. But over time, Carl's routine becomes boring and he loses viewers. When a new, younger painter is hired to revitalize the show, Carl's own fears about his talent as a painter come to the forefront. Paint had everything to be one of the best comedies of the year, with Owen Wilson's unmatched charisma as the lead. But the film was afraid to go for the more acidic side, and ended up as a satire without substance about male toxicity. But looking on the bright side, they can now make that Bob Ross biopic the right way. Number 6, Ghosted, directed by Dexter Fletcher. After Knives Out and The Gray Man, Chris Evans and Ana de Armas proved that they had good on-screen chemistry. All that was needed was to make them a team. Ghosted revolves around Cole, a simple, charismatic guy who falls madly in love with an enigmatic woman named Sadie after a night of passion. Just when he thought he had met the mother of his children, she disappears without a trace, or rather, ghosts him. In need of love, Cole decides to look for Sadie, ending up in an international conflict that threatens the world. Ah yes, she is a secret agent. The phenomenon of ghosting has become very popular after the rise of social media and messaging romances. Although Ghosted is the first film to really capitalize on this, the plot becomes convoluted and loses its focus by introducing elements of espionage and unconvincing villain. The film suffers from pacing problems and seems indecisive about its identity, resulting in a somewhat uneven experience. It's hard to believe that this film was directed by Dexter Fletcher after his huge success with Rocketman. But the good thing is that the chemistry between Chris Evans and Ana de Armas is still intact. Number 5, Knights of the Zodiac. Directed by Tomasz Baginski. Knights of the Zodiac is one of the most beloved manga in history, especially for its popular 80s anime that marked the childhood of millions. We had to wait a long time for a live-action adaptation, although seeing the Sony Pictures movie, I would have preferred to wait longer. Knights of the Zodiac introduces us to Seiya, an orphan teenager who lives on the streets and searches incessantly for his missing sister. On his journey, he unwittingly gains access to occult powers that make him the only person capable of protecting a reincarnated goddess sent to watch over humanity. With Mackenyu as the star, accompanied by veterans like Sean Bean and Famke Janssen, this movie looked pretty good until its release. Fans of the manga went from excitement to disappointment with this adaptation that only took the names of the original characters to create a new and tremendously generic plot, along with designs that make no sense. The universe of Zodiac Knights is vast and difficult to condense into a single film, but it almost feels like an insult to the source material in the style of Dragon Ball Evolution, and that's saying a lot. Fortunately, Mackenyu redeemed himself with the role of Zoro in the live-action One Piece, the best example of how a manga should be adapted. Number 4. The Flash, directed by Andy Muschietti. It's already a fact that the troubled DCEU has officially ended with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and while it gave us some memorable movies, 2023 was its most disastrous year. They couldn't even finish on a high note. Shazam! Fury of the Gods had a terrible performance at the box office and with critics. But if we talk about major disasters, the award goes to The Flash, a film that after years of delays could finally see the light, only to be fulminated on the spot. This movie had a chaotic production that was only made worse by Ezra Miller's continuous controversy. Still, Warner Brothers and some industry figures were calling it one of the best superhero movies ever. Honestly, I think they saw another movie. You can tell The Flash was made with heart by Andy Muschietti, and even Ezra Miller's performance is pretty good. But the plot is a temporary mess crammed with extremely bad CGI. Plus, there are endless cameos and references for fans that wouldn't have even worked with good CGI. Sorry, Warner Brothers. The cameo trick to hide a poor script doesn't work anymore. Well, except for Michael Keaton's return as Batman. He always works. Number 3, The Marvels, directed by Nia DaCosta. Despite DC's decision to reboot its universe, Marvel Studios is far from the greatness it once had, as its latest movies are being big flops in every way. Rather than being a sequel to Captain Marvel, The Marvels is a standalone film that brings together Brie Larson's character with Kamala Khan and Monica Rambeau, heroines who had their origins in the Disney Plus series. At first glance, The Marvels doesn't seem like a bad movie, as it fulfills its main purpose to entertain. Well, it depends on who you ask. Although, for a budget of almost $300 million, the result is pretty generic. Marvel Studios has once again thrown us a spectacle of lights and punches that doesn't bother to develop its characters, much less its villains. The film meanders aimlessly through a succession of side missions and moments that take you out of the possible seriousness that any plot requires. The Marvels exists only to fulfill the calendar, when it should have been one of the best female superhero movies. Funny that the only successful Marvel Studios movie this year was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, precisely because they gave total freedom to their director. People are not tired of superheroes, but of bad movies of superheroes. Number 2, Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. Directed by Zack Snyder. There is no middle ground with Zack Snyder. You either love his movies or you hate them. It's as simple as that. Whenever he releases a film, he causes debate on social networks with fans defending him to the death and cinephiles believing he's overrated. Of course, Rebel Moon could be no exception. Born as Netflix's intergalactic story to compete against Star Wars, Rebel Moon revolves around a relatively peaceful colony until it is threatened by the vile Regent Belisarius. In a desperate attempt to save themselves, the colony's inhabitants send Cora, a young woman with a cryptic past, to seek out warriors from neighboring planets to aid in the resistance. Like the fourth Expendables installment, Rebel Moon has a B-movie feel disguised with a big budget. The special effects, instead of impressing, overload to the point of looking low quality. The performances are forgettable, with underdeveloped characters that leave the actors, including Sofia Boutella, with no room to shine. Rebel Moon fails to capture the essence of the space adventures it promises to emulate. It tries to pay homage to Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai, but ends up being an insult to its inspiration, with shallow characters and a cliched villain. I would say that Zack Snyder can make adjustments for the sequel, as the backstory is decent, although the second part is just around the corner. Number 1, The Exorcist Believer, directed by David Gordon Green. The Exorcist of 1973 is a masterpiece. It was followed by several sequels, prequels, reboots, and even a series. While directors such as John Boorman, Rennie Harlin, Paul Schrader, and William Peter Blatty himself, who is the author of the original novel, contributed to the saga, none came close to what William Friedkin achieved. Now, 50 years after that classic, comes a sequel that is not even a shadow of the original film. The Exorcist Believer begins with two girls who disappeared in the woods, and although they managed to return to civilization, now their bodies are the recipients of a very powerful demonic entity, forcing their parents to ask for all the divine help they can get. Beyond the return of iconic characters and some references to the original film, The Exorcist Believer is yet another Hollywood rehash to squeeze money out of a classic. As in the last Halloween trilogy, David Gordon Green resorts to cheap resources and expected jump scares to scare viewers, with a flat script, regular performances, except for the girls, and an atmosphere that conveys nothing. Any horror film loses out to 1973's Exorcist, though Believer isn't even a good film on its own. And to think, there are plans for a third film. And so we come to the end of the worst of 2023. Beyond the criticisms, it should be clarified that all films deserve validity for being made. We do not know everything that was behind them, so we must be respectful and take the criticism as an opportunity for the filmmakers to improve. That's all for today, friends. If you have any more candidates for the list or disagree with any film, leave your opinions in the comments. With respect, of course. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and hit the notification bell, as well as subscribe to the Replay Media so you don't miss any of our videos. Thanks. See you soon.